So welcome everybody to our session on the Alma 2023 Roadmap webinar series. We're discussing today the new and improved Alma overlap analysis tool. This is Yoel Kortic, Senior Librarian at Ex Libris, and we're joined also by Noam Fast from Alma Product Management. Before we get into the specifics of the new and improved Alma overlap analysis tool, a few minor let's call them administrative issues. This is our Alma 2023 Roadmap Webinar Series page. I'm going to send this out in the chat to everybody just in case anyone doesn't already have it, though I think everyone does. This is where we have links to the registration for all of the series on this, all of the webinars. Those that have already been completed, we've got links to the recordings here, as well as the accompanying resources. We're now on September 5th. The PowerPoint, which I'll be using, appears here. Those of you who will be viewing this via YouTube, you can also see the links to these pages in the description of the video. In addition to this page, there's also an online help page on working with the overlap and collection analysis. It covers everything that we'll be discussing today. Also, let me send this out while we're at it, and then we'll continue. So I'm sending this out as well in case anyone doesn't have it, though a Google search on overlap and collection analysis, Alma Ex Libris, will also find it. A reminder that here on our YouTube channel, you can find all of the recordings of all of our webinars. You can do a search right here and find all of the recordings. I'll send that out as well into the chat. And one final comment, just a reminder of our page, the Education and Knowledge Webinars page, which also has links to all of the recordings in the on-demand section. If we switch here to the on-demand section, for example, last week we had bibliographic ranking in Alma. August 9th, we had the new user interface for customizing letters, the new unified PO line task list. So you've got everything here as well. By the way, we're redoing this page. Stay tuned for some big news. We're redoing this page for both the registration and the recordings, and you'll see that soon. So without further ado, let's begin. I will begin briefly with this PowerPoint just for some introductory information. Then we'll be going directly into Alma to look at it. So before we even get in, this is a overlap analysis tool for electronic collections. I just want to differentiate so there won't be any confusion. This is not the other overlap analysis which we have in Alma Analytics, which is an overlap of what the institution has in physical and also in electronic, with the goal of deselecting or weeding the physical. This that we're looking at today, this overlap analysis tool, is the overlap collection analysis, electronic collection analysis. It checks what overlap exists between electronic collections, either which are already activated in the institution or not yet activated and in the community zone. So the whole goal here is to have a better collection development analysis. A collection development analysis which analyzes the unique titles or the duplicate titles that are across existing electronic collections. That's the ultimate goal here. We've added what's called the new overlap collection analysis tool because we've added two main fronts, two main areas. One is the user interface, a new user interface, and the other is the ability to do a comparison with collections in the community zone. Until now, you could check your electronic collections in your institution zone and compare electronic collections, but you couldn't do it against the community zone. Now you can, and we'll see that, and we'll see why that is useful. And you can also compare against the entire institution zone and not just one or two specific collections. So there are a few specific use cases. First, we're going to review the use cases here, and then we're going to do them. So one use case is an institution is considering purchasing a new electronic collection. And before they purchase this new electronic collection, the institution wants to check, if we purchase this collection, what are we really gaining? We all know that there are titles, portfolios, electronic resources where the same electronic resource exists in multiple electronic collections from different vendors. And often an institution will have the same title in multiple electronic collections. So when purchasing a new one, the institution will want to know, what are they really gaining? What are the new titles? Then this is what it looks like if we look at a Venn diagram. On the left, we have the entire institution zone. And on the right, we have a specific collection in the community zone, which we're considering to purchase and want to know how much overlap will there be if we purchase it. What titles do we already have? Then we have use case 2, which is divided into two options. So here, the institution is considering canceling an electronic collection. The institution already purchased, already activated, already has an electronic collection, and they're considering canceling it. But before they cancel it, they want to know, what are we going to lose if we cancel this collection? So here we have on the left the e-resources in the entire institution zone. On the right, the e-resources in a specific collection, which is also in the institution zone. And what is the overlap? So that if they know, if we cancel it, what are we really losing? There may be 90% of the electronic resources in that collection may already exist in other collections. Maybe they're not losing a lot. Or maybe that 10%, which they would be losing, is very important. So they don't want to cancel it. Then there's option 2, where the institution is considering canceling, and they don't want to compare it to the entire institution zone, but just to a subset. So here in option 2, as you can see, it says comparing it to e-resources in a subset of the institution zone, whereas in the previous case, I'm going to go backwards, it's in the entire institution zone, and then here, a subset of the institution zone, which may be just specific collections. Then we have use case 3, where the institution receives a file of identifiers of titles that might be ISSNs, that might be ISBNs, receives from a vendor or any other source, and wants to know, of these titles in the input file, which ones do I already have in the institution? Which ones do I not already have? This is something which, since the very beginning of Alma, back in 2012, when the first institution went live, this is something which has been requested many, many times. It was kind of possible in a roundabout way via analytics, but now it's, you'll see, a very organized and easy method. So those are the use cases. I'm going to stop with the PowerPoint now. You can all check it on your own. In fact, I'll close it. And let's jump into Alma. So in order to access the overlap collection analysis, let me just see if there's anything in the chat here which needs attention. Does Rialto also help with overlap? Someone asks. Rialto itself doesn't run an overlap collection analysis. However, resources which are purchased via Rialto are just like, in this sense, are just like resources purchased via non-Rialto, via just going to a vendor and purchasing. If the resource is in your institution, regardless of how it was purchased, this overlap collection analysis works, including those purchased via Rialto. Okay, I don't see any other chat, so let's go on. So accessing the new overlap collection analysis, it's from resources. I'm not in the configuration menu. I'm in the regular Alma menu. And we come to resources, and under advanced tools, we have here overlap collection analysis. And it opens up. You'll recognize this interface from all of the new interfaces, all of the other webinars we've done with the new Alma user interface, the PO line task list, the analytics objects list, the resource sharing task list, the managed sets, the search holdings records, etc., where we have a list from the beginning. Then we have an option here on the top right to split between split screen and list view. Now I'm in split screen. That if we go back into the list view, I just clicked on the top right there to toggle. And then if we click on one of these entities, it opens in either full view or to list view. So I'm not going to go through all of the functionalities of the new UI here because it's the same as the other places which I mentioned. So let's begin. If we want to create a new overlap collection analysis, we choose new analysis. And there are two options. One option is to compare the collections, like those first two use cases that I mentioned shortly ago. And the other one is the lookup titles. The lookup titles is when we upload a file, as it states here, upload a file and check their existence in Alma. And we're going to begin with the compare collections. So we'll say compare collections. And now we can begin filling out, or filling in, to be more exact, the data. So what we're going to do here in our first case is we're considering purchasing a new collection. And before we want to purchase this new collection, we want to see how many titles in that collection already exist. So the electronic collection which we're considering to purchase is in the community zone. We don't already have it, but we want to know in that collection what already exists and what does not exist. Let's take a look at that electronic collection which we're considering purchasing. If I try to purchase, if I search for this now, we're using Elsevier, Science Direct, eBooks, Referex, Miscellaneous. And I'm searching for this now in the institution. As you can see here, I've chosen, oh, sorry about that. In the institution, here we are. I don't have it. However, it does exist in the community. And I want to know, before I purchase it, what am I really gaining? Because there's a good chance that among these 386 portfolios in this electronic collection, I may already own quite a bit. So that's our goal right now. Okay, so here we go. Overlap and collection analysis. And we will say new analysis, compare collections. And let's fill it in. So here's our report. I'll call the report the name of the electronic collection and then the timestamp. It defaults to new report and the timestamp. And I'll give it a description. I'll say, what in this do we already have? I'll even give it a question mark. So when I look at this later in the list here, I'll know exactly what it is. Now we have compare collections. So choose the collection source for which you want to evaluate overlap. So we'll click on that. Now, in this case, unlike the next case we're going to do, in this case, we want to search for something in the community zone. So I'm going to choose my search scope here in the community and give it a search. And when we find it, we'll click select. It's because we're going to select that as our source, what we want to compare to. Okay, so I'm going to click select here. And now we have this as our source. Now, what do we want to compare it to? We can compare it to selected collections, which I have in the institution zone, and click here and start selecting specific collections, or to selected collections from the community zone, or to the entire institution zone. I'm going to do it to the entire institution zone because I want to know, of everything I already own, what already exists. Okay, match method. We're going to start this time by doing by the title match method, which uses the normalized title. In our next example, we're going to use the ISSN. So we're going to say title match method. The available for group, we're not going to use that. However, the available for is a feature for institutions to define electronic collections are only available for certain libraries. Also in a network zone to define that certain collections are only available for certain institutions. We're not going to choose that. We are going to choose include date coverage in the comparison, this third option here, which means it's not only going to check does that resource already exist, but does that resource exist with the same coverage? And there are files which are overlap with complete coverage and overlap with partial coverage. And we'll see that in the next example as well. Reference year for calculating embargo. I'm going to leave that as current year. The embargo being that period usually very close to the current date where an institution does not make their resources available. It might be the last month, the last half a year, etc. I'm just leaving it current year. And then I'm going to say include physical title matching indication in the electronic report that it checks not only do you have the electronic resource, but is there a physical resource as well? And we'll see that as well. Okay, so everything is filled in, and I'm going to click generate here on the top. And when I click generate, it will start running the report. There we go. We can see now it's pending. And someone says this is an ebook collection, so I'm wondering why. Hold on, I missed that. It pops up, then it disappears. Let me go back into the chat. Someone says this is an ebook collection, so I'm wondering why match on title instead of ISBN. Is it because there may be multiple ISBNs? It's just randomly, I chose the title. Sometimes, by the way, if in the institution they don't have the correct ISBNs, they might want to try it by the title. You might even want to try it both ways. It's not a specific reason. And that brings to another topic, by the way. You can run this as much as you want. It doesn't do any data updates. It's what we call read-only in the computer world. So because it's read-only, you can run it twice, once by title, once by ISBN, and see if they come out the same or not. I chose it by I chose it by title because in my next example, I'm going to use ISSN. So I wanted once to do it by identifier and once to do it by the title. By the way, a whole nother topic. I find not only here in a training environment, but working with real customers, when checking an overlap using a normalized title is, I'm afraid to say, but it's usually more accurate than using identifiers, usually, but that's for another day. But it's just a preference. It doesn't have to do with the existence of multiple ISBNs because it does check all ISBNs, and we'll see that later too. Okay, so it says here completed successfully. Let's take a look. I'm just going to click it now, and then in the right pane, it opens up. So of those 386 titles, we have 150. You can notice this nice new interface, by the way. We have 150 titles with complete coverage overlap. We don't have a file here that says partial coverage overlap. We will have that in our next example. And we have 236, 236 plus 150 being the total of 386. We have 236 with no overlap. So that means if we purchase this electronic collection, we will get 236 new titles, and 150 we already have. So the institution will likely want to make sure that those 236 new titles that they don't already have, are important because they're purchasing 150 that they already have. Let's take a look at these files now. I'm going to click the download, but before that, we also have here all of the details of what we chose when we ran this. So let's download both of these. Here's the first one, downloaded. Here's the second one, downloaded. And let's go to my downloads. And I'm going to take both of these and put them in a folder which I already created before this session, called Session 2 Overlap, because I don't want to mix it with my other file. So it's Session 2 because we did one this morning. So here's the two files, and I'm going to call these Use Case 1 because we're going to get files with the same name for our next example. And let's take a look at them. So these are ones with complete coverage overlap. This is I believe there were 150 of them. So all of these already exist in my institution. Here's the identifier here, which is the normalized title. Normalized title, putting everything in lowercase, removing, what's it called? Punctuation, like the colon here is gone. So let's take a look, for example, this first one. Up and running with AutoCAD 2011 2D drawing model. So what do we have here? The MMS ID of what we already have. Our source set, which we chose, was Elsevier Science Direct, the interface of that, the portfolio ID. Then that it was in we chose it in the community zone. And now, what does it already match on? So this one matches on a collection, ProQuest Safari Tech eBooks Online, with this interface. You can see there's a lot of information in here. And then there's if it has physical matching. No, let's see if any of these have physical matching. I'm just going to scroll down. No, I know in the next one we do. So let's take a look at this now. Let's also look for one more example here in the target set. Okay, here. Here's one. Let's look at this one because it's in 2 electronic collections. It's an overlap, and it already exists both in eBook Central Academic Complete UKI edition, and it exists in ProQuest Safari Tech Books Online. Android Forensics. Sounds like an interesting topic. So if we come in here and we were to search now for electronic portfolios by title in the institution, we should see the one those two. Here they are. So that's the eBook Central Academic Complete UK and the ProQuest Safari Tech Books Online, which is just what we saw here, that it's in those collections. And the ISBN, all of the details, just like if we did any search. So these we already have. It's an ebook collection, so the coverage here is not relevant, I would say. In most cases, I've seen some odd cases where ebooks do have some coverage, but we'll save that for another day too. But typically speaking, on an ebook, coverage isn't an issue. So now we know all of these in that file we already have, and we know what collections they're in. Then we have our second file. I'll close this one. Our second file is titles of portfolios with no overlap. So all of these exist in that collection which we're considering purchasing. By the way, if we forgot, what is the collection? How did we run this? We have on the bottom here another tab called Analysis Information and all of the Excels that are exported. So in that analysis information, we also see, you can see it ran pretty quick too, 24 seconds. We see all of the parameters we use to run this job. We see how many match, etc. So all of these are new titles which we would get. Let's see what we got here. The title, the matching identifier, which in our case is the normalized title. our source set. We're not going to have a target set or a set that it's already existing because it doesn't exist. So let's take a look, for example, at this one here. And if everything worked correctly, I will not already have this in Alma because these are ones with no overlap. Let's take a look. No overlap. Doesn't exist. This one too. Shouldn't exist because Alma already did the check. Will check as well. And doesn't exist. So in sum, we were considering purchasing a new electronic collection. We weren't sure how much or how many of the titles in that electronic collection we would really be gaining. So we ran the overlap collection analysis tool, and we saw, I'm going to open it back up. We saw that if I purchase that, 38% of the titles I already have, or 39% it's closer to, 61% I don't have, I would be gaining 236 new titles, and I have an Excel file with those new titles. Okay, before I jump into the second example, second use case, let me check the chat here and see what's going on. Okay, so someone says, I'm going to try to read these in order. Is there any columns in the export about publication date or edition, as a title match could potentially match an earlier edition? No, there is no nothing in the output file about the edition or the publication date where you say doing as a title match could match on an earlier edition. That's correct. However, now we're going to do by ISSN, and that should have a different ISSN. Again, I chose the title for other reasons, but the output does not have the edition or the date. Okay, let's move on now to our second example. So now we're going to do a comparison of one electronic collection in the institution zone to all of the institution zone. Now we're not considering buying something, we're considering canceling something. We already have an electronic collection called Taylor and Francis Library and Information Science Collection, and we decide maybe we want to cancel it. Maybe there's a significant amount of those titles. Let's take a look at that collection. Maybe there's a significant amount of titles in that collection that we already have. So we got Taylor and Francis. I think this is it right here. Okay, so I've got this, and I'm considering canceling it, but I want to know, of all of the titles I have in here, how many of them do I already have in other collections? Let me close this Excel so when I open a new one, we won't get confused. So let's run it on this one. So again, we'll come to Resources, Advanced Tools, Overlap and Collection Analysis, a new analysis, and we're going to choose Compare Collections. Lookup titles is for an input file. So I'll call this one Taylor and Francis, and it used the default date timestamp. And I'll call this, should we cancel this? I can use 255 characters. Actually, I should clarify that. I can use 255 Latin characters. If I use a different language, each one is sometimes considered more than one character, but we'll save that for another day too. So I'll say, should we cancel Taylor and Francis Library and Information? Maybe we all, oops, sorry about that. I'll say, maybe we already have many of the titles in other collections. Okay. Now, choose the collection which we want to evaluate. Last time that we clicked on this, we searched an electronic collection in the community zone because we were considering purchasing, and we were considering purchasing something in the community zone. Now we're considering canceling something in the institution zone, so we're searching the institution zone. And here's my electronic collection. and I'm going to say select because that's the one I want. Okay, so that's been chosen. Now we're going to decide here, what do we want to compare this to? If you recall, when I showed the use case 2, there were two options. One was to compare the electronic collection that we're considering canceling to all of the institution zone or to just a subset. So if I want to compare it to a subset, I would choose here where it says choose the collections that you want to compare it with, or selected collections from the community zone. I could also compare this to collections from the community zone because maybe I'll cancel this and buy a different one. Or the entire institution zone. So now I've chosen the entire institution zone. Now the match method. So this time I'm going to choose the ISSN match method. I'm going to leave everything else the defaults. I'm going to say include physical title matching indication in the electronic reports. And I'll say generate. So now this one's running. While that's running, I see something came in the chat. Let's go take a look. Can we compare to local collections in this way, i.e., to non-package resources where we have access to specific titles only? If I understand what you mean by local collections, yes, because we're not touching the community zone here. All of our searches were in the institution only. If you've created a local collection, a local electronic collection, then you can do that. If you went here and if this is what you mean, add local electronic collection, yes. Noam, if you want to add anything, go ahead. Noam, my colleague who's also with us today.
Thanks, Yoel. If it was what we understand, yes, it's supported. But if I understand correctly, maybe the question is for platforms, meaning you have a link and then you have a list of titles in another platform. This is
not yeah. So it depends what you mean. If exactly. You mean from here, yes. Okay, let's move on. And so this is already completed. So let's see what's going on. I'm going to click it. Okay, now we have 3 files. We have titles with complete coverage overlap, titles with partial coverage overlap, meaning I have the same title or I have the same resource according to the ISSN, but the one I have has a different coverage than the other ones. And then I have titles of portfolios with no overlap. So let's think here a minute. We have, if I cancel this, I'll really only be losing 8% of them, 4 titles, because 4 of them have no overlap. All of the others have overlap, 87.76%. Let's say 88%. 88% of them I have with complete coverage overlap, meaning I have them in other electronic collections. In 2 of them, I have partial. So I'm really only completely losing 4. Now, it might be that those 4 are really important. That's a decision the institution can make. And let's take a look at those files. And again, I have all of the information which I use to run this. So let's download these now. So we'll download the first one, download the second one, download the third one. Let's go take a look at them. And let's put them in our dedicated folder. Oh, look at this. Okay, so that's going to be the 737 ones. Right? It's 95730. Here they are. Okay. I should have cleaned out my downloads, but those are the ones, right? 737. Yes. No, that's 7:37 a.m. Those aren't the ones. I want the, sorry about that. Let me do it like this. Sorry about that. It's these. Okay, good thing we caught that. So let's put those now in our dedicated folder. And let's rename these to use case 2 so we don't get confused in our next example. And this one here. And this one here. Okay, let's see what we got. So titles with complete coverage overlap. Okay, so this is the, oh, this isn't the one. Sorry about that. That's my use case 1. Use case 2 we want. All right. So complete coverage overlap. So you can see person who asked about the multiple ISBNs here, it's ISSN, but it works the same way. So it's checking on all of them. It also, yeah, it checks on all of them. So let's take a look at this. Music reference services quarterly. Again, these are ones I already have with complete coverage overlap. So I checked about Taylor and Francis Library and Information Science. Let's look at the first 2 rows. That's my source set. That's my interface for the source set, portfolio ID. What I have for coverage in that source set. And is it open access, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to hold off on the chats for a bit until we're done. So this first one, for example, is in 2 different electronic collections and different interfaces, et cetera. Then it's giving us also the coverage, which completely overlaps with what we have. These are from 1992, from 2004, and from 1992 again. If you recall, ours, the one we already have, is from 1997. This is from 1997, and the ones we already have are from even earlier, 1992. So we're definitely not losing something there. Has physical matching? No, it doesn't have any physical matching. Let's just see if there's anything here with physical matching. We'll check that if there is, and we'll go take a look at the example inside. So let's see. If I come in now to Alma and I search for this, I should see this in those other collections. Those other collections being CCC Get It Now and Scholars Portal T and F. By the way, it's checking both activated and not activated, but then it also gives an indication here if whatever is matching is activated or not. Because I may have the same resource, but it's not active or not active yet. So there's an indication here whether it's active or not, right here in column Z. Let's jump into Alma and take a look at this one. So we'll say electronic portfolios. Here we'll say electronic portfolios. Here it is. Okay, so here it is in the CCC Get It Now, just like we saw in the Excel from 1992. Here it is in EBSCOhost, also from 1992. And here it is in the one that I already have, the one we were comparing our source set, Taylor and Francis Library and Information Science Collection. I have it from 1997. So just like the Excel said, I'm not losing anything. And this is just one example from the entire Excel file. I'm not losing anything. I already have it in other collections from available even earlier. So that's the first file. Let's close that. Let's take a look at the second file. So the second file is no overlap. Let's actually do the partial coverage first. So these are ones that I do already have. However, I might be losing some of the coverage. When it's partial coverage, it means I don't have all of the coverage for ones I already have. We saw, for example, now in the file we just looked at, that it wasn't the same coverage, but everything I already had is covered in the others. It'll be clear what I'm describing in a moment. So this one here, let's take community and junior college libraries. And let's see here. So in mine, I have, in the one I already have from Taylor and Francis, my coverage is available from 1999, volume 8, issue 2. However, in the ones that it matches on, which are in collections EBSCOhost, CCC Get It Now, and Scholars Portal T and F, it's much earlier, 1982. So I have now from 1980, excuse me. Yeah, I have now in other electronic collections from 1982 until 2017, 82 until 2013. And in what I have here, already I have from 1999. So if I get rid of this, I will be missing those that are from 1982 to 1999. Let's see the second one. In the EBSCO host and the Scholars portal here, we have from 1998 to 2007 and 2007 to 2007. If I come over here, I have now already from 1997 to 2007. So I have 97 to 2007, and here I got 98 to 2000. So I'd be missing a year because I have from 97, this is from 98. So it's partial. I'd be missing that 1997. Let's go see this inside Alma. Let's take the Journal of Internet Cataloging. Let's even search by the ISSN. So we'll come in here, ISSN. Okay, so here's the Journal of Internet Cataloging. The one I already have is the Taylor and Francis. I've got it from 1997, and we can see this example right here from 1998. It's partial coverage overlap. I'd be missing a year, that 97. Okay, one other file before we go to the chats is use case 2, no overlap. So these are the ones I'd be completely losing. If I cancel this electronic collection, let me close these. If I cancel this electronic collection, then I would be losing these 4. Now there's 4 here. And if you recall, when we were in resources, overlap, and collection analysis, and we ran this and looked at the results, these are the 4 here. Titles with no overlap. So if I cancel, these are gone. So I want to look, are these really important? Of course, they are actually. Library acquisitions, practice and theory, it is very important. All 4 of them are very important, especially cataloging classifications quarterly. So I might want to say, I'll be missing only 4, but these are 4 very important that I don't have in any other electronic collection. If we go and search for this, or maybe I could buy it as a standalone. I could look into purchasing these 4 as standalones. Maybe that would be cheaper than having the whole electronic collection, but that's already, we're just providing the tools, the logic behind what the institution wants to do. That's another story. So here, let's take a look at this one. I have it only in my source that I compared from, Taylor and Francis Library and Information Science. It doesn't exist in any other electronic collection. Okay, let's take a look at the chat. We're moving nicely. We've got time for our third example here without overly rushing. So let's see here. So I'm trying to start from the beginning. Okay, here we are. If we activated a CZE collection into IZ, which we have, for example, this one here, Cataloging Classification Quarterly, we see from the icon that we activated this from the community zone into our institution zone. Do we call that e-collection IZE collection in overlap analysis? Yes. This one, it's from the community zone, but when I ran it, I compared the source for my institution. The only time I compare something in the community zone or choose something in the community zone is if I didn't yet activate it. Otherwise, I can compare it in my institution. In fact, I should compare it in my institution because it might be an aggregator. It might be something that I purchased, but I didn't purchase all of the titles in it. So I always want to check inside my institution. Okay, let's go on. Let me see if there's others here. Now, I think somebody answered themselves, so let me just scroll and see what the story is. Mark, one moment. And okay, so it looks like this person answered themselves already. If you didn't already answer yourself, feel free to send in, but he says, never mind, figured it out. Okay. Now another one. I noted the J of Internet cataloging partial map example only had a date diff. The voluming numbering was 1 for both, so it might be metadata thing making it say partial when it's really 100. This is caveats. Well, it's not looking at the metadata. When it's looking at the overlap analysis, let me go into this portfolio just for the fun. It's looking at the coverage, which is here. It's not looking at metadata when it's checking the coverage overlap. It's seeing what is here, not what is in the mark tags. Okay. I hope I understood your question correctly, and I hope my answer is clear. When it's checking the overlap of the coverage, it's looking in the coverage tab of the portfolio editor. It's not checking anything in the metadata that says what the coverage is. It's only looking here in the coverage tab, which is what Alma uses. When somebody goes into Primo and tries to get, okay, so metadata is more than mark tags. If you want to state where you're wondering if it's coming from, feel free, and we'll respond. It's coming from here, from the coverage tab of the metadata editor in our tool. But if you want to ask something else, feel free. Okay, so let's move on and go with our input file. So now we have an input file. I'm going to close this one. And let's take a look at our sample input file. Now, inside this working with overlap connection analysis, under the section performing lookup titles, let's take a look here. This is a description of the Excel file and a description of what it contains and what the headers will be, the ISBN or the ISSN, etc. This is the description here. So it can have the EISSN, ISSN, or the EISBN, ISBN, LCCN, etc. So you can see here all of the details. My specific example has ISSNs. Let's just go take a look there. Here and here. So this is the input file we're going to use. It's a small input file because I want to be able to focus on the examples. And all of these we really do have. Then I made these up. So we'd have examples of ones I don't have. We don't have in our institution. So this file typically would be received from a vendor or any other source, but typically from a vendor. And let's run it. So I'll close this and let's run. So again, we'll say resources, advanced tools, overlap and collection analysis. And unlike the previous examples, this time we're going to say lookup titles. So I'll call this check file. Oh, let's just say file from vendor Achen Limited. And here I'll say, which titles do we already have from Achen Limited's? Is that how you do the possessive S on limiteds? From Achen Limited's file. Okay, now let's start filling things in. And now we'll select the file. Previously, we selected collections, either a collection already in the community zone or a collection in the institution zone, or all of the institution zone. Now we're going to come and choose that file. So here's the file we just looked at a moment ago. And what do we want to compare it to? We can compare it to the institution zone electronic resources, including community zone activated electronic resources. So maybe that touches upon someone's question also. We're comparing it to all of the institution zone, including those that are activated from the community zone, which originally we didn't even have this in here. We thought it was clear by saying institution zone electronic resources, which includes those from the community zone, but this is added clarification information. So let's choose that. I can include physical title matching indication. Let's do that. This time, I'm going to do it one Excel line per match. It's very difficult to explain what the difference is here, but showing it, what is that? A picture is worth 1,000 words, I think is the expression. So we're going to see the difference. The first time, I'm going to run it one line per match. In fact, I'll even call it here one line per match. So we'll be able to see the difference later. Now let's run this. And I'll already run it again the same way. But this time I'm going to do one Excel line per identifier. So this will be a HIN file. Here I'm going to give the same description, but I'm going to say one line per identifier. Okay. And I'll generate this one as well. Oh, I got to choose the file. And I'm going to compare this to institution zone electronic resources with a physical title matching. And now I'll choose that instead. Now I'm choosing one Excel line per identifier and generate. Okay, so now we have use case 3A and use case 3B. So here's our first one, completed successfully. So it says here 10, which is 58.82% of the input file titles found in the institution zone. Let's take a look. This is a nice file. Here it is. There's only one file, so I don't need to start moving it around. So what do we have here? 4 different tabs. The last tab is the analysis information. And so we know how did we run it. And let's look at the other tabs. So we have matches with single resource, So it matched on one resource. Matches with multiple resources. So it matched on multiple. And no matches. So let's take a look. Matches was on a single resource. So both of these ISSNs matched, but only on one resource. There's one title and one collection. For example, if we look at this one, it's in my input file and it's in Alma. So if I look at this one in Alma, it's here and it's in the collection Chinese Electronic Periodical Services Humanities, just like it says here. And again, it's in my input file. Let's let that open. Sometimes when opening 2 Excels, it takes a little bit. There we go. And if I say here, Control F, that, oops. Oh, because they got rid of the dash. There we go. So it's already it's in my input file and it has one match. Let's go on. Then we have matches with multiple resources. Now, here's where we have, and I'm going to take a picture, we have separate lines for each identifier. You can see this is the same identifier. It exists in 4 different collections, and each identifier is on a separate line. I'm going to take a picture of that so that later, when we look at the other output, we'll see what we meant. Oops, sorry about that. I meant to do a square. So here we got each one on a separate line. And we'll see the difference in our next example. So if I take, for example, this one here, this one, we should see this in 4 different electronic collections. So it's in my input file, and it's in 4 different electronic collections. Perfect, ProQuest Central, Easy Be Free, ProQuest Central, Get Full, ProQuest. This is ProQuest Central Student, this is ProQuest Central, this is Library and Information Science Collection. And just like it says here, ProQuest Central Student, Easy Be Free, and Library and Information Science. Then we have no matches. So these are in the input file and do not exist in Alma. However, this one does exist physically, and it's giving the holdings record of it. So this one doesn't exist at all. None of them have electronic matching, but this one has physical matching. Okay, now we have 3 minutes. So let's look at the other example where we ran it. Let's come back here. I can close my input file. And we'll go back to resources, overlap and collection analysis. So this one we ran using one identifier, multiple identifiers for one line per identifier. Let's take a look at this one. So now in the matches with multiple resources, you can see all 4 of these with the one ISSN is all on one line. Whereas in our previous example, there was a separate line for all of them. Useful, sometimes places will take these files and do various types of further processing. So by having them on separate lines, it has different advantages and disadvantages. In any case, you can do it either way. Okay, we have 2 minutes. Let's see what kind of chats we've got. Okay, did the person who was talking about the coverage and the metadata add any additional information? I want to make sure I answered that one correctly. Oh, it might have been the person said my mistake. It was saying metadata when I meant the data. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else. Yes, different vendors will list coverage differently. It can for sure affect the overlap reports. Okay. Again, we're taking it from the coverage tab of the portfolio, which is standardized. Every portfolio, the portfolio editor of every portfolio is the same. Maybe I should stop sharing my my paintbrush. Okay, let's see what else. Can you please share the recording link? Yes, after the session, we always share the link, and I sent out at the beginning a link to our YouTube channel. I'll send that again where you can search it. And also the education and webinars page will appear in the on-demand section. And it will also be listed on the Alma 2023 Roadmap Webinar Series page. They're all here, plus there'll be a message to the Alma list. So they'll all be there. You can look here, or you can look okay, someone says they got it. Okay, so we can no longer send to those. Okay, let's see if there's any other chats here. If there are 2 target titles that match, one has complete coverage and another has partial, will it appear in the partial coverage? Yes, it'll appear in the partial. Okay, it looks like I got them all. Okay, and we're exactly at 7 p.m. local time, so that works out perfect. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody, and we hope to see you in all our next sessions. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.